Dr. Adrian Kessler stepped off the shuttle onto the violet sand of Thessera 4, his breath catching as 3 moons hung low on the horizon. The remote colony was barely more than a research outpost, a collection of biodomes clustered around the indigenous settlement. He'd traveled 6 months through folded space to reach this place, drawn by the opportunity to study the Thesseran reproductive cycle, one of the most complex and mysterious biological processes in known space. The colony director, Commander Pavel Rehnquist, met him at the landing pad. "Welcome to the edge of everything, Doctor. The Thesserans have been expecting you." Their chief midwife, Livra, specifically requested a human observer this season. Adrian adjusted his field pack, curiosity piqued. "Requested? That's unusual. Most species are protective of their birthing customs." "The Thesserans are different," Pavel said, leading him toward the alien settlement. "They believe birth is a universal language. They want to understand how we perceive their process." The Thesseran village emerged from the twilight like a cluster of pearls, their structures formed from a crystalline substance that hummed with soft bioluminescence. As they approached, a figure emerged, tall, ethereal, with skin that shimmered between silver and blue. Her eyes were large and multifaceted, catching light like cut gems, and her movements possessed a liquid grace that seemed to defy human anatomy. "Dr. Kessler," she said, her voice resonating with harmonics that made his chest vibrate. "I am Livra. Welcome to our sacred season." Adrian found himself momentarily speechless. He'd reviewed countless holos of Thesseran physiology, but nothing prepared him for the reality of Livra's presence. She radiated something indefinable, a warmth that wasn't temperature, an energy that made his skin tingle. "Thank you for allowing me to observe," he managed, extending his hand in greeting. Livra looked at his outstretched hand with curiosity, then placed her own against it. Her palm was warm, textured with minute patterns that felt like silk and sandpaper simultaneously. The moment their skin connected, Adrian felt a jolt, not electrical, but something deeper, as though a frequency within him had suddenly found resonance. Livra's eyes widened slightly. "Interesting," she murmured, withdrawing her hand slowly. "Commander Rehnquist, I will take the doctor to his quarters within our settlement. He will need to acclimate to our atmospheric harmonics if he wishes to observe the birthing chambers." Pavel nodded, already retreating. "Doctor, you're in good hands. Contact me if you need anything." Adrian followed Livra through winding paths between the luminescent structures. Other Thesserans paused in their activities to watch him pass, their multifaceted eyes tracking his movement with keen interest. He felt exposed, studied, as though walking through a gallery where he was the only exhibit. "Your people are curious about humans," Adrian observed, trying to break the weighted silence. "We are curious about life in all its forms," Livra replied. "But yes, humans particularly. Your species carries energy signatures we find compelling." She glanced back at him, and something in her expression made his pulse quicken. "Especially during our fertile season, we can perceive these signatures more acutely. It helps us understand compatibility, vitality, the readiness of life to continue." She stopped before a structure slightly apart from the others, its walls pulsing with a gentler light. "This will be your dwelling while you remain with us. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, I will begin your education." Her eyes held his for a long moment. "And perhaps you will begin mine." As she departed, Adrian stood in the doorway, watching her luminescent form fade into the violet darkness, wondering what exactly he'd gotten himself into. Adrian woke to the sound of harmonic chimes, the Thesseran equivalent of dawn. Soft light filtered through the translucent walls of his quarters, casting prismatic patterns across the floor. He dressed in the lightweight field suit designed for xenological work and emerged to find Livra waiting outside, holding a shallow bowl that contained a swirling, opalescent liquid. "Drink this," she said without preamble. "It will attune your perceptions to our frequencies. Without it, you will miss the subtleties of what I must show you." Adrian hesitated only briefly before accepting the bowl. The liquid tasted like starlight might, cool, effervescent, with an aftertaste of something floral and ancient. Within moments, the world shifted. Colors became more vibrant, sounds gained texture, and he could sense something. A network of energies flowing between the Thessaran structures, between the inhabitants themselves. Good, Livra said, observing his dilated pupils with satisfaction. Now you begin to see as we do. Come. She led him to a domed chamber at the settlement's heart. Inside, the walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to breathe. 3 Thessaran females reclined on raised platforms, their abdomens distended with pregnancy, their skin glowing with an intense radiance that made Adrian's enhanced vision almost overwhelmed with sensation. These are our mothers-to-be, Livra explained, her voice dropping to a reverent whisper. They are in the 3rd phase of gestation. The energies within them are building toward culmination. Adrian activated his recording equipment, but Livra placed a hand on his wrist, stopping him. Not yet. First, I must examine you. Examine me? I'm here to observe, not to. To understand our process, you must first be understood, Livra interrupted gently. Our birthing cycle responds to the energetic presence of those nearby. If your frequencies are discordant, you could cause distress to the mothers. If they are harmonious. She paused, her multifaceted eyes studying him with unsettling intensity. The outcome could be remarkable. She gestured to a raised platform similar to those supporting the pregnant females. Reluctantly, Adrian complied, lying back as Livra approached. She placed her hands on either side of his head, not quite touching, and closed her eyes. The air between her palms and his skin began to warm, then tingle, then pulse with energy that resonated through his skull and down his spine. Breathe, she instructed. Let me read you. Her hands moved slowly down his body, never quite making contact but leaving trails of tingling warmth in their wake. Over his throat, his chest, his abdomen. Adrian's breathing quickened despite his attempts to remain clinical and detached. This was research, he told himself. Scientific observation. But his body wasn't listening to his rational mind. When Livra's hands hovered over his lower abdomen, she inhaled sharply. Her eyes opened, and in them Adrian saw something between wonder and hunger. Human, she whispered, her voice resonating with those deep harmonics, your energy is ripe. What does that mean? Adrian asked, his voice rougher than intended. Livra withdrew her hands slowly, as though reluctant to break the connection. It means you carry a vibrancy, a life force that resonates at frequencies complementary to our reproductive cycle. In my entire life as a midwife, I have felt this quality in only a handful of beings, and never in a human. She sat back, her luminescent skin brightening with what Adrian was learning to recognize as excitement or arousal, possibly both, in Thessaran physiology. You could enhance the birthing process. Your presence could ease the mother's transitions, strengthen the offspring, perhaps even. She trailed off, seeming to reconsider her words. Even what? Adrian pressed. Livra met his eyes directly. Even serve as a catalyst for new forms of life. Our species has long dreamed of cross-pollination with compatible species, but the energetic requirements are significant. Few beings possess the necessary vitality. She placed a hand over his heart, this time making full contact. Her palm was warm, and through it, Adrian could feel a pulse that wasn't quite his heartbeat or hers, but something that emerged from their connection. You possess it. Adrian should have pulled away. Should have maintained professional distance. But the sensation of her touch, the way their energies seemed to spiral around each other, held him frozen. Livra, I came here to observe, to learn. Not to participate in. Observation is participation, she said softly. The moment you entered our settlement, drank our attunement elixir, allowed me to read your energy, you became part of our cycle. Her fingers traced a slow pattern over his chest, and Adrian felt his body responding in ways that had nothing to do with human. For 3 days, Adrian existed in a state between observation and immersion. Livra kept him close during the birthing ceremonies, positioning him where his ripe energy could flow toward the laboring mothers. He witnessed 4 births, each more extraordinary than the last, the Thessaran infants emerging in crystalline sacs that dissolved upon contact with their mother's skin, the newborns immediately luminescent and aware, their eyes focusing on Adrian with unsettling intelligence. "They remember you," Livra explained after the 4th birth. "Your energy signature imprinted on them in utero. You are part of their emergent story now." They walked together through the settlement as evening fell, the 3 moons rising in sequence across the purple sky. Adrian found himself hyper-aware of Livra's proximity, the way her bioluminescence brightened when she spoke, the harmonics in her voice that seemed to resonate in his chest cavity. "I've been reading human literature about birth and reproduction," Livra said suddenly. "Your species has such fascinating rituals around it. The intimacy between partners, the physical merging that creates new life. We Thessarans procreate differently, yet the energy exchange." She paused at the edge of a crystalline pool that reflected the moonlight in fractal patterns. "I wonder if the fundamental experience is similar." "I'm not sure I follow," Adrian said, though his quickening pulse suggested his body understood perfectly. Livra turned to face him fully. In the moonlight, her skin seemed to shift through colors, silver to blue to violet to something that had no human name. "You've been helping our mothers birth new life, Adrian. But you haven't experienced what it feels like from our perspective. To merge energies, to feel another being's vitality flowing into and through you." She stepped closer. "Would you like to understand?" Adrian's scientific training screamed caution, but something deeper, something that had awakened since drinking the attunement elixir, since feeling Livra's examination, pulled him forward. "What are you proposing?" "An exchange," Livra said simply. "I want to understand human energy at its source. And you want to understand ours. We can teach each other." Her hand rose, hovering near his face. "It requires touch. Sustained contact. Vulnerability. If you're unwilling." Adrian caught her hand, bringing it to his cheek. Her skin was warm, textured, alive with subtle vibrations. "Show me." Livra's eyes brightened with surprise and something fiercer. She led him away from the settlement center to a smaller structure half concealed by night-blooming vegetation. Inside, bioluminescent panels cast soft, shifting light across cushioned platforms. The air felt thick, charged with potential. "Lie down," Livra instructed, her voice taking on the commanding tone he'd heard her use with laboring mothers. "This will be intense. Your nervous system isn't designed for our form of intimacy, but the attunement elixir should allow you to withstand it." Adrian reclined on the largest platform, and Livra knelt beside him. She placed both hands flat on his chest, and immediately heat bloomed beneath her palms. "I'm going to open you to our frequencies," she said. "It will feel like nothing you've experienced. Don't fight it. Let your energy rise to meet mine." Her hands began to glow, and Adrian gasped as sensation flooded through him. It was pleasure but transcended sexuality, every nerve ending activated simultaneously, his awareness expanding beyond his skin to encompass the room, the structure, Livra herself. He could feel her presence like a second heartbeat, her consciousness brushing against his with curious, gentle exploration. "Yes," Livra breathed, her luminescence intensifying. "You're so vibrant, Adrian. So alive." Her hands moved lower, tracing patterns over his abdomen that left trails of phosphorescent light on his skin. "Among my people, this is how we court. How we determine compatibility. Energy exchange before physical merging." Adrian's back arched as she pressed both palms just below his navel. The sensation concentrated there, building in waves that made his vision blur. "Livra, I can't, it's too much. Breathe through it," she commanded. "This is only the beginning. I haven't even shown you the full resonance yet." She swung one leg over his hips, straddling him without removing her hands from his abdomen. When Thesserons mate, we create a circuit. Energy flows from one to the other and back again, building, amplifying, until it reaches critical resonance. That's when conception can occur, when the energies are so perfectly balanced that they spontaneously generate new life. She leaned down until her face was inches from his, her multifaceted eyes capturing his gaze entirely. I want to create that circuit with you, Adrian. Not for conception, we're not biologically compatible for that. But to understand. News of Adrian's deep integration with the Thesseron birthing cycle spread through the settlement, and with it came complications. Commander Rehnquist contacted him via communicator, his face creased with concern. Doctor, I'm receiving reports that you've become intimately involved with the alien midwife. I need to know if this is affecting your research objectivity. Adrian stood in his quarters, still feeling the residual warmth of his latest resonance session with Livra. Commander, I understand your concerns, but what I'm experiencing is the research. The Thesserons don't separate observation from participation. To truly understand their reproductive cycle, I have to engage with it fully. There's engaging, and then there's crossing lines, Dr. Kessler, Rehnquist said sharply. The ethics committee back on Earth would have my head if they knew you'd become sexually involved with an alien species during a scientific mission. It's not sexual in the human sense, Adrian protested, though the argument felt weak even to his own ears. It's an energetic exchange that serves the same function, Rehnquist interrupted. Look, I'm not here to judge. But you need to maintain some professional distance, or this entire mission could be discredited. Just, be careful, Doctor. The connection terminated, leaving Adrian alone with his conflicted thoughts. Was he losing objectivity? Possibly. But he was also gaining insights that no human had ever accessed before. Surely that justified the methods? His meditation was interrupted by a soft chime, Livra at his door. But when he opened it, her usual radiance was dimmed, her skin flickering with patterns he'd learned to recognize as distress. What's wrong? He asked immediately. Come with me. Quickly. She took his hand, and Adrian felt her urgency through their energetic connection. She led him to the birthing chamber, where a scene of chaos greeted them. One of the pregnant Thesserons, Nessa, Adrian remembered, was in obvious distress, her skin flashing erratically, her breath coming in harsh, arrhythmic gasps. Two other midwives worked frantically around her, but their attempts to harmonize her frequencies seemed ineffective. Livra rushed to Nessa's side, placing her hands on the laboring mother's distended abdomen. What's happening? Adrian asked, hovering uselessly. Energetic dystocia, Livra said, her voice tight with concentration. The infant's frequency is misaligned with Nessa's. If we can't bring them into harmony soon, both will die. What can I do? Livra glanced at him, calculation and desperation warring in her eyes. Your energy, it's so potent, so adaptable. If you were to join the circuit, to add your vitality to our attempts to realign them. She shook her head. But I can't ask that. The risk to you, the energetic drain could damage your nervous system permanently. Adrian didn't hesitate. He'd witnessed 4 successful births, felt the joy of new life entering the world. He couldn't stand by and watch Nessa and her child die. Tell me what to do. Livra's expression flooded with gratitude and fear. Here. Place your hands beside mine. Open yourself as you do during our resonance sessions. But don't pull back when it becomes painful, you must maintain the connection until the infant is free. Adrian positioned himself as instructed, his hands flanking Livra's on Nessa's writhing body. The moment he opened himself to the frequencies, pain lanced through him, hot, sharp, like touching a live wire with his entire being. Nessa's dysrhythmic energy thrashed against his consciousness, while somewhere deeper, he sensed the infant's fear and confusion. Hold steady, Livra commanded. The other midwives joined the circuit, adding their strength. Adrian felt his awareness stretch, encompass all of them, 6 separate beings merging into one unified will focused on a single purpose: harmonize the frequencies, ease the passage, welcome new life. Sweat poured down Adrian's face. His muscles trembled with effort. The pain intensified until he wanted to scream, to pull away, to let his consciousness retreat into the safety of his skull. But Nessa's suffering was worse, and the infant's terror was palpable, and Livra's determination flowed through the circuit like steel, reinforcing his failing will. Now! Livra's voice rang out with commanding power. All of you, surge with me. They pulsed as one, a massive wave of coordinated energy that swept through Nessa's body. Adrian felt something shift, like a lock clicking open. Nessa's screams transformed into harmonic tones of relief and triumph. The infant emerged in its crystalline sac, which dissolved to reveal a tiny, perfect Thessaran, already glowing with healthy bioluminescence. The circuit broke, and Adrian collapsed backward, his vision graying. Hands caught him, Livra, pulling him into her arms. You did it, she whispered fiercely. You saved them both. Adrian's consciousness flickered in and out. Adrian's recovery took another week, during which he learned the true extent of his bond with Livra. He could sense her emotional states from across the settlement, feel the general direction of her location, even catch fragments of her thoughts when she was experiencing strong emotions. The connection worked both ways. Livra could read him with equal clarity. This is unprecedented, she told him during one of their evening walks. The birthing season was nearing its end, only a handful of mothers remaining. Thessarans can form bonds with each other, but I've never heard of a cross-species bond of this depth. Should we report it? Adrian asked, though he already knew the answer would complicate everything. Eventually, perhaps, Livra said. But not yet. Let us understand it ourselves first. Commander Rehnquist had become increasingly distant, clearly disapproving of Adrian's integration but unable to deny the breakthrough scientific data he was transmitting. The rescue of Nessa and her infant had particularly impressed the xenobiological community back on Earth. Several colleagues had sent congratulatory messages about his innovative participatory methodology. But Adrian knew the truth was more complex than his clinical report suggested. He wasn't just studying the Thessarans anymore. He was becoming part of their world, their cycles, their understanding of life and energy and the mysterious forces that connected all living things. The final birth of the season came on a night when all 3 moons aligned overhead, casting the settlement in tripled light. The mother was Kalora, one of the oldest females, carrying her 8th child. Livra invited Adrian to serve as primary support, a role usually reserved for the mother's mate. Are you sure? Adrian asked, nervous about the responsibility. Kalora requested you specifically, Livra said. She says your energy reminds her of the ancient stories, of when the Thessarans first encountered other species and learned to harmonize with foreign life forces. She wants that blessing for her final child. The birthing chamber was prepared with additional bioluminescent panels, creating cascades of light that pulsed in rhythm with Kalora's contractions. Adrian took his position at her side, opposite Livra, with other midwives forming a circle around them. As the labor progressed, Adrian felt himself slipping into the familiar resonant state. But this time was different, more controlled, more conscious. He could modulate his energy output, guide it to where Kalora needed support, ease the strain on her aging body. Livra watched him with obvious pride, her own energy twining with his to create a stable field. Kalora's infant emerged in the deepest part of the night, and the moment the crystalline sac dissolved, Adrian gasped. The newborn was unlike any of the previous infants he'd witnessed. Her bioluminescence flickered between Thessaran patterns and something else, patterns that resembled human neural rhythms, creating a hybrid display that mesmerized everyone present. Blessed by the human, one of the midwives whispered in awe. She carries both signatures. Livra examined the infant carefully, wonder and uncertainty crossing her features. This shouldn't be possible. You're not genetically compatible with us. Yet somehow, your energetic signature has influenced her development. She looked at Adrian with something between amazement and concern. She's not a hybrid in the biological sense, but she carries your imprint as strongly as she carries her mother's. Calora cradled her infant, smiling with exhausted joy. She is blessed indeed. What should we name her, human? Adrian felt the weight of the honor, the responsibility. That's for you to decide. She's your daughter. She is our daughter, Calora corrected gently. Yours, mine, Livra's, and all of ours who witnessed her emergence. That is our way. It takes a community to raise life. She studied the infant's unique light patterns. We will call her Adriana, for the human who helped her into this world. Adrian felt tears sting his eyes, overwhelmed by the gesture. In that moment, he understood that he'd become part of something larger than research, larger than a mission. He'd been woven into the fabric of this community, made family to an entire species through bonds of energy and shared purpose. The season ended 3 days later with a grand ceremony. All the new mothers and their infants gathered in the central chamber, and the settlement celebrated with harmonic songs that made the crystalline structures resonate like vast instruments. Adrian stood beside Livra, feeling the community's joy wash over him in waves. What will you do now? Livra asked as the celebration wound down. Your mission was for 1 season. Will you return to Earth? Adrian had been wrestling with this question for weeks. Earth seemed so distant now, his old life a faded memory.